Hello, this is Michael Dennin, Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning and Dean of the Division of Undergraduate Education at UC Irvine. And this is Conversations with the Vice Provost, where I sit down with members of the UCI community and the larger community to discuss topics of interest to our UCI students, UCI community, California, and we hope the larger world. And today I'm really excited to have with us Ed Lee, co-owner of Wahoo's. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I think my first question really has a lot for our students because it's about life choices. You ended up in the restaurant business. And I think our students are all struggling with, what am I going to do when I graduate? Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So talk a little bit, why and how the restaurant business for you? Like, what did that process look like?
So for me it was, I grew up in the restaurant. I'm one of the only brother that actually lived with my dad on top of the Pine Garden in Newport Beach. So it's been in my blood, I guess, all my life. I was born and raised inside the restaurant. And when I finished college, my parents wanted, being an Asian parents, they wanted us to go to law school or doctor, engineering, but I didn't do well in college, so I had to come back to a fallback. And for my fallback plan was two things, either a surfing industry or the restaurant industry. So it was tough getting in the surf industry, so I actually convinced my older brother to say, hey, maybe mom, will back us up in one more venture. And a lot of begging and a lot of, hard times with him, but my mom finally agreed to let me try one last chance at doing something entrepreneurial in our family. So,
now you alluded to this, but I know this is just anecdotal, but I hear from lots of people who either are involved or been various friends. The restaurant business as a business is one of the harder ones, right? To actually, make a profit at and sometimes even a living at. And for our students who are thinking about these things, what were some of for you, was there much of the calculation about how much of a profit versus living versus you love doing it? How did these factors interplay with each other?
Well, so I always tell kids, you can't look at the Wahoo's example because we didn't have a business plan. We had no profit and loss statements. We had nothing. So like a lot of times, Wing and I were very, very lucky that my mom and dad would always, help us financially every month. Until my little brother, who's an alumni from UCI here, until he came on board, we really had zero planning. I mean, we're still like, how are we even surviving? But we put in places little things like, inventory controls.
Right.
My little brother goes, you don't have to buy a whole box of toilet paper, just buy 6 at a time. You don't have to go buy it. I'm like, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to save some time if I drive there and just pick up the whole box and I don't have to go back for next month.
Right, yeah.
So we started putting all those things in place, and probably within 3 months of my little brother joining the company, we finally got getting paychecks. Until then, I was still living at my mom's house, and it's not a bad place because it's in Newport, so it's, but hard to get dates when you live at mom's house.
Yes,
Yes.
I get that. Now, something else there that's really, I think, a comment you made that I think sometimes our students don't understand. One of the things is they come in, and like you said, many of them have been told or are inspired by their parents. It's be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, right? Those are the jobs students hear about. Those are jobs family hear about. Many of our students are first in their family go to college, and if you're coming from that place, often there's not a big understanding of the various options out there. And one of the things I think many students who are at UCI, they're all very, very smart kids. They're looking for that intellectual challenge. And it's funny, I hear you talk about it, and running and planning a restaurant business isn't just about cooking. No. There is a whole host of other true intellectual, creative problem solving. These skills we talk about, I would argue, come into it. Is that something that resonates with you, or?
Well, everybody thinks it's simple because obviously, first is the restaurant industry is the hardest industry. It's the number one failing. It's 9 out of 10 restaurants fail every single year because everybody goes into it thinking this is easy. I just chop some food, cook some things, and the worst thing is that all your family and friends mislead you, saying, "Oh, you're a great cook. You should open a restaurant." But they don't know the rest that goes behind it, the finances. So you can't just open the door. accounting, finance. A lot of kids that come out of college don't even have that, especially if they're coming out of engineering or biology. So I always tell these kids that come out, two of the cooks chefs that I work with are math majors. So they already understood, hey, food costs. There's a lot that goes along with it besides cooking.
And I would assume there's a lot in just logistic planning. You mentioned, going out and buying the right size of toilet, but I would think planning how much food to buy, for instance, is a critical piece of figuring out how to make a successful restaurant.
Oh, absolutely. So you create a par, which we never did in the first couple of years, but you create a par so you know how much food you actually will have needed for the week, and then that's how you begin. So you start but that takes like 6 months to get going because you don't know how busy you're going to be. But within the 6 month time at the restaurant, you start getting a number that you feel comfortable with. Like I should have 600 pounds of chicken or 300 pounds. So you get that part of it, and that's where my little brother came along and did all that for us. I mean, Wing and I were still up front, either whether cooking or running the register.
Right.
So it was a great team because he was able to do all that for us while we're out in front.
And I think that's something also when thinking about restaurant business or any business, I think it applies, is sometimes our students don't understand the team that's needed, and that if you have an interest, there's many fields you can go into as a student because that element of the team, right? If you're a cook, you're probably not necessarily needed at a retail, but any other member of the team in a restaurant business probably shows up in lots of other businesses and vice versa. So it's an interesting thing for students to think about, who am I in the team?
Well, there's all kinds of opportunities, especially as the restaurant expands to 2, 3, 4, right? And then you got marketing, a whole marketing department, art direction. I mean, we have a George that does all our cards, arts, print media, and then of course my brother Win runs our marketing department. So there's marketing, there's accounting, there's payrolls, there's it becomes a real business, and then somebody on top to manage everybody else.
So what you're saying is my daughter, the artist, could work in a restaurant.
Oh yeah.
So when she's asking me about careers, I now know where to point it.
Even, by the way, there's a career now out there where there's kids that come in and do the chalkboard for us. That's a whole industry in itself. People don't realize how hard that is. People think that the chef owner's up there at night, writing the specials on the board. No, we actually hire someone to do that because it's professionally done because you got to be able to read it.
Now, the last piece I want to talk sort of about with the restaurant is you and I talked about a little bit when we had dinner one time, the idea and how you guys thought of fish tacos and Wahoos.
So
can you share that story a little? I'm sure you've shared it way too many times, but we need it in this video.
So Wahoo's great because, my parents were pushing us hard to go to law school. So I did get into law school, but it wasn't a top tier one. Wing got into a better college law school than I did, but I actually convinced my older brother saying, hey, listen, I don't know if I'm going to make it to law school. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little short surf trip and figure out, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And he was worried about me going to law school too. So I actually went surfing down in Mexico. It was like 30 days down there. Was the worst trip I've ever had because it was hot. I was hungry. Nothing was working. There was no waves for the whole month. But the last couple of days we got back to Ensenada, and there's a dock that fishing dock.
Right.
And I'm fluent in Spanish, so I was trying to negotiate a boat ride to Todos Santos to see if I can surf out there with a friend of mine. And as I'm standing there, it wasn't right away the idea, but that whole dock was filled with these little stalls selling fish tacos. And it was like 50 cents a taco, or like $1 beer. So but we knew everybody that was eating at the dock. It was like a lot of guys from Orange County, San Diego, and that got stuck in my head. So then when I came home, Wing and I were talking, and finally, as we're convinced, like, hey, let's open a. I goes, dude, we got to do this fish taco. So Wing went back down, and that was how everything started. And we were like, how do we get this cart indoor? How do you create this atmosphere of surf and that indoor? And that's how Wahoo started. So Wing and I came home and we found a place, and we had no other plans besides that.
Now you mentioned you're not really a cook. So who was the first one cooking the fish tacos?
So Mingo and I came up with all the recipes, and then Wing actually went out and he went out and found all the friends that would help him. But on the prep side, I was the back of the house. I've been prepping all my life. And the reason why we chose fish taco too is because it was simple. I mean, it doesn't, not that it doesn't take a chef, but it's a lot easier. Even I
Right.
could do it. So
Right.
I was the cook prep guy, and Wing was front of the house when we started.
Awesome.
So just two of us. So
Well, that is a great segue to the second topic, because you had the idea on a surfing trip. So talk to me a little bit about surfing.
So back in high school, unfortunately, I was asked to transfer high school. So I went to Newport Harbor, but at Newport Harbor, everybody surfed. So it was like one of those things where, hey, you want to hang out with us? If you want to hang out, you're going to have to learn how to surf. And I was 13, 14. I'm like, oh, no. But I went out there, and I fell in love with the sport. I mean, it's exciting. The one thing that I always growing up is like, you can never catch the same wave twice.
Right.
Because it's a changing wave.
Yeah.
It's never the same, and you can't do the same things you could think you can do. And it's exciting. I've gotten to travel, and then all my close friends from high school are really amazing surfers. So I just hung out with those guys, and then George helped me get my first job in the surf industry. So I worked at surf shops, and so I've been doing this, for a long time. I love it. I travel. My little brother and I go every couple of years. The same 5 guys get together. We go on the road and surf Costa Rica, like Nicaragua. But now that we're getting older, we're not surfing big waves anymore.
So you had alluded to thinking of, restaurant versus surfing as a career. So were you thinking working in surf shops? Were you thinking actually being able to surf in competitions? Like, how does that work?
Not competition.
Or were you not even really thinking of any of that?
No, so for a while, actually, in high school, right out when I finished high school, a really great mentor for me is Peter Schroff. So Peter allowed me to start doing production with him. So
Okay.
I started learning how to do cut and sew, shorts, and he taught me a lot. I mean, so I was going with him up to LA, buying zippers, buttons. So there was a career where there was a spot where I could definitely be in
Okay.
as a production guy. Definitely not a pro surfer, but I could do marketing. I mean, I finished college with a marketing degree. So I thought maybe that was it. So I actually have 2 resumes that I was going to give to friends of mine when I finished college, but it was that decision: law school, surf. And I, Wing and I had a long talk, and I said, I figure if I can take 1 year off, maybe I can come back to this. That's why I still have those resumes in my office.
Awesome.
I
That's interesting, because it's another effectively retail-ish.
Yeah.
If I can call being a restaurant retail, kind of a retail-ish direction. Now, what is your? I hate these questions. They're always hard to answer. What was your favorite place to surf?
Well, I got really lucky. I went to Point Loma for 2 quarters. Unfortunately, my surfing got here, but my grades got here. But Point Loma is probably because I was there and you didn't have to drive anywhere. It was literally in front of my dorm.
Right.
I think that's one of my favorite surfs. People are going to hate it, but anyway, Sunset Cliffs is probably my favorite surf spot in Southern California. And so I love going out there.
Great. What is, I think one of the things that's important for our students to understand, I would, if I can sort of project onto you, I would say you managed to find a career you loved with the restaurant, and you also have a hobby and a passion you love with the surfing, and you have a career that allows you to keep doing that and do both, right? How has that been a benefit, a positive thing, having that surfing as that added passion and thing you can do on top of your career and all the other stuff in life? Because I think that's something I would encourage our students to seek out.
Yeah, so, I've been Wing and I got really lucky when we first opened. We didn't think that we're going to connect with our surf industry partners. Okay. But as we got going, Wing and I were about to shut down the restaurant until Mike Lesher walked in the store. Mike is one of my old bosses from way back in the high school days. He came in and he loved the food. So Mike went back and he's sort of the key in how we kind of connected with the surf industry. So he was I think he was the vice president of Billabong. Okay. So he hired us, or Bob Hurley, or whether him or Bob, they hired us to do a catering over there, and that launched our career. That really got us into the sort of the kind of the surf industry. And then Wing started sponsoring surf events. So we married Wahoos into the surf industry. If you look at the industry, Wahoos, and you look at the surf, we kind of wrote their coattails upward with them. And then Wing is an amazing connector. So between all the friends that I grew up with and new friends, and Wing seeing that, and people think that the first 3 years of Wahoos we were surfing, hanging out with we were working seven days a week,
Yeah.
24/7, going to LA to buy our own produce, going to the fish market ourselves. So we weren't surfing. But then after about 4 years, we started going, hey, yeah, these guys go, hey, why don't you come out in the water? So Wing and I would jump in the water for a little bit, especially after we opened our Laguna store.
Right.
Surf and walk up to the store and rinse off. So we weren't surfing a lot back when we first opened. People have a misunderstanding. We worked hard.
But what's interesting about that and exciting is I tell the students a lot of life is looking for the hidden opportunities that you might not otherwise see. And you were able to leverage this surf connection in a completely different and unusual way. And I think that's kind of a cool connection. And now, once it got going, you're able to go back to your surfing.
Oh yeah. Now part of the whole deal is to surf. You know, I try to get out as much as I can out in the water. I just got back from Hawaii just to because I was needed to defrost my body for a couple of days. So I went to Hawaii, but now it's part of our lives. I mean, my little brother and I, again, you know, we surf as much as we can because it's still fun. I mean, and it's a great way to just chill out there with my brothers, which is
now.
Weird.
You mentioned it, so one last question on the surfing. You had told me once going to Hawaii made you, talking to people there, realize kind of some of the differences between that attitude towards surfing and some of what happens in Southern California. You want to share that? Or?
Yeah, so this is kind of a little bit more embarrassing, but
Yeah.
here in Southern California, I think the problem is that we're in a rush to surf, and we're in a rush to get in and out. Most of us are getting in the water like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and we have that time limit because either we're going to work or going somewhere. Versus in Hawaii, they have the total aloha spirit. And I think I lost it for a while because I was getting intense out there, scrambling, trying to catch as many waves possible. But there was a gentleman in the water about 3 years ago out in the water, and we're surfing. He's like, dude, he could tell. He goes, and he called, which is not a great term for us, is like, hey, you mainlander. I'm like, oh man, what is that? It's like, it means like in general, anybody that's not from Hawaii, you guys don't belong here. You guys are from mainland, and that sucks. But he's like, relax, take your time, you know, and catch a wave and let people catch wave. It's about aloha. I think you're struggling. And he was right. I was trying to catch every wave possible at Waikiki, and that's so silly. It's so immature too. So I'm like, oh man. And the same gentleman, by the way, was there last month when I was there. He was still there in the water, still there going, aloha, brother. So it was awesome. The Hawaiians get it. They really get it. It's about why. It was like, why do you surf? And I said, well, I love it. He goes, well, then relax, just relax. And then it changes your attitude. And I came home, I told my friends, I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna hustle anymore. I'm just gonna catch 3 waves in an hour, 4, hopefully maybe 5, and then I'm good to go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a general life lesson that would also benefit our students, of finding that balance in life and remembering if you're just rushing all the time, you don't get to actually enjoy the things you're doing. That brings me to our final topic. I mean, in a sense, that was a mentoring moment where he mentored you in surfing. And I know recently we've talked, you've gotten more into mentoring. How has that been? How has that worked for you with helping, you know, young people who want to get into the restaurant business?
So a lot of the young chefs have come to me to talk because they figure I've been doing this for 30 years and he might know something. And some of the kids, like what I do at Wahoo is I negotiate leases, I do build outs and you know, sort of the real estate portion. And so with these kids, when they come to me, I start giving the inputs, just that alone, or budgeting now that I know how to budget. So that's how it kind of started. It was one of the kids came to me, wanted to open a restaurant, and you're like, well, you have this. Like the one thing that I always tell anybody that wants to open any business is when you're putting your budget together, you also got to put yourself as payroll.
Okay.
A lot of people that I still talk to, whatever business they're opening, they budget rent, payroll for everybody else, this, that, and they forget the line item that they got to live within that budget too. So they're like, within 3 months, I go, oh man, you know, I can't get paid. I forgot that line item. So that's how it was sort of started, and then. Brian Husky was my first sort of try. I talked to a lot of kids, and Brian really was came down. We worked together. We found that, I mean, I left the menu up to him because he's a chef, super creative. And I said, let me help you with the finance, like getting everything in tune so you can open a store. So that was my first try with doing it. And Brian now has a second store in SoCo. So it's been a lot of fun. And then for me also, I'm learning about all kinds of new foods and different. I love sampling foods. So.
Hey, That I've decided, it was fun getting married once, and one part I liked was all the sampling of the wedding cakes. So, if I'm ever desperate for cake, I may go around pretending that I'm getting married again and get some free wedding cakes. One thing that I think our students struggle with, and again, a lot of our students don't have that experience growing up of examples of networking.
Right.
And one of the things we're trying to help them develop is, how do you go seek mentors? How do you go build a network for yourself? Would you have any particular advice for a student as if they wanted to find a mentor, find a network, some of the best ways to go about it?
Well, so they got to get involved with certain young clubs. And then there's a lot of us that actually speak in the circuit, and you can't be shy. When you go to these events, you see somebody that you might not know. I always tell kids too, you go to 20 events and and there was not fruitful at all.
Right.
But the 21st one, you found the one guy that can help you do something else. Right. So then all of a sudden it's like all that. But you got to ask, you got to go up there, come in with a business card of your own, exchange a card, and ask them if they have 10 minutes to have a quick discussion.
Right.
And that's how they started. I mean, my kid's at UCI right now, and that's the same thing I tell them: get involved. Make sure you go to functions. And there's a lot of CEOs that are willing to give all these kids half an hour, 45 minutes of their day.
And I would think for the kids, from what you just said, is also helping them understand not to take the no's personally.
Correct.
Right. To understand, like you said, CEOs, whoever you meet in the company, they're busy people. And it's going to be a little bit of luck. Do you catch them at a time where they can have time for you? Do you not? And just be kind of patient with that process.
And that person that you meet that day might be your mentor anyway.
Right.
But he might know someone else that you start telling them, hey, I'm interested in this career. What do you think? And they go, these CEOs, just because I'm in the restaurant doesn't mean I don't know CEOs in other industries.
Right.
So I said, let me call someone. Let me ask them if they'll give you 20 minutes. Networking is key. I always say it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know that's going to open that door. And be nice to the receptionist.
Now, for you, what other things, when it comes from your side, if people, I'm going to turn it around, we don't often give advice to people who are going to be mentors. Now that you've done this a couple of times, is there advice you might give to someone who's thinking of being a mentor, how they might select who to spend extra time with, how to budget their time so they're not overcommitting their time, but they're having an impact?
Your first try as a mentor is going to be shaky no matter what, because if you've never done it before, it is time consuming, because you should be able to give this person a half an hour every week, no matter what, especially a young student. And then when the student starts screwing up and doesn't necessarily take your advice, don't take it personally, which I do all the time. When I give advice, I'm like, look, I've done this, so learn from me. But they're kids. I forget all the time that you're talking to a 23, 24-year-old that really, or 20s, that really has never worked with any, they don't have a lot of work experience. They don't have a lot of network experience. So you got to be patient, and push them slowly. And I think that's key, is patience with these kids. And I'm learning as I go too, because I'm like, man, just be patient with this one. This one is gonna, but I like their attitude. When I see somebody that has the energy, I get excited with them, because they're really trying to go forward and look not just for a mentor, but also, okay, can you help me get an internship?
Right.
They're asking the right questions, which is nice, versus you don't have to push them like, have you done that? Have you done this? What are you majoring in? What are you doing this? What are you doing? Versus they come out and goes, this is what I'm majoring, but I'm not thinking this career, I'm thinking this. And you're like, wow, let me think. So those are nice.
Awesome. Well, Ed, this has been so exciting. I think we've got great information for our students, great information for people who want to be mentors, and now we know I need to go learn how to surf. See, my relaxation, which takes way too much time, is golf. That's my problem. Like surfing, you can go for an hour and catch 4 waves. Golfing, you're stuck out there for a long time. So I need to find a new relaxation hobby that's shorter. Anyway, great chatting with you, Ed. Thank you for being here. This has been Conversations with the Vice Provost. If you like this video, click on our other conversations. Thank you. thanks for watching. This is the time where you get to be part of the conversation. Comment below. You know the drill. You know how to do that. Subscribe, follow us, look for us on all our social media, and stay part of the conversations. Thank you.